So after we have built a connection to the horse and we have the right kind of equipment, we start to build up communication signals. So we can both understand each other, we can both communicate with each other. And we call these aids. So the aids is how I really start communicating with the horse with more intent or more purpose, right? And the aids help with that communication. They are signals, they are actually our common language in the art of riding, and it's very much like learning the ABC. So when you start learning how to ride, you don't start out by writing sentences. You start out by writing letters. And then you combine letters to words, and then words into phrases and sentences. And what I often see is that people start with sentences. So it is too complicated and it's not really clear, right? So because you first have to learn the small elements, right? The small kind of building structures. Then we have a whole system of aids. We build a frame around the horse with that. I'll come to that in a moment. And we use them for giving shape and we use them for improving movement. Often what I see is that horses don't really understand the aids. So they rather react to a pressure, but they don't fully know what to do. And that always creates brace in the horse. So you get softness when the horse understands. And what I see often is no connection to the horse, no understanding of the aids, but trying to do exercises. And that leads really to stiffness and also to mental stress. And that's why, while teaching the aids, I want to always keep connection. So that's my goal. Yeah. So if my horse doesn't understand, I lose connection a little bit. And then really try to not make more pressure, but rather find a different way of explaining things. And why do we use the aids? So aids should help. So they are messages to the horse and they should bring the horse more into balance. So make it easier for the horse. And I really think that when using aids in the right moment, the horse will feel that this is really helping and they will like to listen to it because it makes their job actually easier. And yeah, very important, because they are not used to terrorize the horse, but to help. And which aids do we have? So we have what we call the primary aid and the secondary aid. So the primary aid, that is in the groundwork our body language and things connected to the body language like energy, focus, intention, and also our breathing. So these can be called primary aids. So for the simple reason that we can't really take them away. And in the riding, this is our seat. And then we have the secondary aids to help us. We have the hand, the rein, the leg, the voice, and the whip. And even in the groundwork, we still call those aids the same. We talk about rein aids, we talk about leg aids, even though we will use the whip for most of those and just point. Okay, just to make that clear. Because the system comes very much from, of course, the riding, and we keep the same names for the aids just to stay consistent with our system and not, lead to confusion. So, and I think that's what's really special about the academic art of riding. So the groundwork in the academic art of riding, and that's that we build a complete frame of aids around the horse, right? So we have the hand in front. So I'll speak about that in more detail, and we'll also watch some videos about that. So we have the hand, which is of course in front of the horse, and in the groundwork that means influencing the skull. Then we have the outside rein and inside rein, and that we use for moving the shoulders. We will point with our whip, and I'll show you in a moment how that works. Then we have the leg aids, inside leg, outside leg. We have also the collecting aids, which are more directed towards the hindquarter of the horse. There are more aids, but I want to keep it more simple for this presentation and just talk about the basic ones which you will need to start with the side movements. All right, so Everything clear until now? Do we have any questions? Well, if you do, then just please use the chat box. Right, the secondary aids. So I'll start with those, although of course we always communicate with our body language first, but for the sake of simplicity, I will start here with the secondary aids. And the first one is the hand. So the first thing we want to teach the horse is how to stretch forward down from the hand. So a relaxing forward down, so that it's really a giving. So the horse is supposed to lower the head, follow our hand forward down, so that the upper line stretches, the neck becomes more open at the poll, and the under neck relaxes. And it is also has to do with mental relaxation, so with a giving, right? And we will teach this with a very light impulse, so no pulling. What I often see is that when students try to teach that, then the horse doesn't react because of course they don't really know what this means. So then the students pull harder, and that actually makes the horse tense the muscles. So they hold against, and of course that kind of trains the wrong muscles. So we don't really want that. And I will often teach this with a goodie. So just giving my impulse and at the same time presenting a goodie down there. And then it's very, very easy for the horse what to do. The hand is also responsible for standing and bending, and I'll come to that in a moment. Yeah, so these are the three things that we teach with the hand: is the forward down, the standing, and the bending. So here's just a picture of that process, trying to explain to the young horse, hey, can you follow my hand and stretch a little bit the neck? So stelling, so that's actually a bit of a kind of funny word because we don't really have a really good word for that in English. We could say the bending of the poll or the flexion of the poll. I think it's not a very good word. So we have used the German word Stellung, and we have kind of anglicized it a bit into Stelling. And what that actually means is so the position of the skull as relative to the spine. It's a huge topic, and I will explain a bit more also in a video. And I said we cannot go into too much detail here, but what is important is that the skull of the horse is also participating in the bend. So the horse looking a bit to the inside, that the outside lower jaw, so on the outside, on the outside, the lower jaw is also placed to the outside, and on the inside, the lower jaw comes a bit closer to the atlas wing. I will explain in a moment. Yeah, so the lower jaw has to slide a bit to the outside. So you can imagine it like nose a little bit in, lower jaw a little bit out, right? So to make it more simple, and also that you want to have the outside ear and outside eye a little bit more forward. So you can see here in the skeleton, so they have the connection from the skull to the first vertebra in the spine. The first vertebra in the spine is called atlas. It has these huge atlas wings. So I don't think this is done very well here in this drawing. You will see it much better on my horse in a moment. So the atlas has these big protrusions. They're called atlas wings. They're really quite prominent and visible in the horse. And there comes a conflict. If you want to bend the horse's, if you want to put the horse's skull like into the bend, you will come into a conflict with where the lower jaw ends and where that atlas, those atlas wings are starting. And we need to create a bit of space there so the lower jaw can turn in under the atlas wing. So here I have some pictures just to show you what I mean. And I will show also in the video. So first we kind of lower the head a little bit, and then we can take a stelling, and that is really the flexion of the poll to the right and to the left. Then the hand also helps to explain bending, because we have this really cool tool, the cavesson, where we can place the head of the horse. So bending, which means the bending of the neck. But also, not only that, we also want to have the forward of the inside hip and the coming forward of the outside shoulder. and the correct chest rotation, so that the chest is lowering on the inside and coming a bit up on the outside. And we will see that the rotation is correctly by also the crest of the mane falling a bit to the inside. So here you can see that in a picture. You can see how the horse has a correct bending, correct standing, and how the inside hip is coming a little bit forward. We will still talk about that because it is really important for all the exercises. Here I've made a bit of a drawing, so just for your imagination to know a bit more what I mean. So in the correct bend, the inside hip of the horse is coming more forward, and that actually brings the whole spinal column into a rotation. So the spinal processes are tipping a little to the inside, and that makes the ribcage rotate down on the inside and a bit up on the outside, and the outside shoulder coming more upwards. So the horse is a bit contracting on the inside, stretching on the outside, and also that rotation of the spinal column, it places the neck and the head correctly into the bend. All right, so what I will do now is I'll stop sharing and I will show you a bit of a video about that. So here you just see the stretching forward down, really quite simply. And here with the young horse, just teaching that. And here I'm explaining, you can see here the lower jaw where this ends. And then here, this atlas wings, they're really quite close together. There's just a gap of about 2 fingers. And if I try to just bend the head, you will see how that gets into a bit of a conflict. And there are also some structures there like the spit girdles, windpipe, so we don't want to squeeze those. So we first make a bit of place, and then we can easily turn in the lower jaw under the atlas wing. So here you see this, how this looks like from the groundwork position, taking the stelling to the left and a little bit to the right. And also taking a bit more of a bend from the hand. So here you can see the bending, and you can see the inside hip swinging forward in the bend. Here you can see that from a different perspective. You can see how the whole body of the horse reacts, even the tail coming over to the bend. And now also the horse even changing the balance a bit. And again here, a different perspective. So bending does not only involve the neck, but it is really the whole horse reacting. All right. I have one question here. Do you also use a word voice when your horse take the head down? Well, you can, but I also like to school the hand. And I think it is benefit. Of course you can do it. Why not? But I also really want my horses to understand those secondary aids and not only react to the voice. So the voice signal can be very beneficial when you are riding, in fact. So now comes the moment of tension, because yesterday I had a problem sharing my screen again. So I hope this will work. If not, I have an alternative plan. It will just then take me a moment to set up. Yeah, today it works. Super. Phew. All right, so then we have what we call the inside rein. And the aid for inside rein is really responsible to lead the shoulder out. It takes weight off the inside front leg, so shifting weight from the inside front leg more to the outside front leg. And that, of course, then also helps with bending, right? Because often an imbalance, lateral imbalance in the shoulder is responsible for a lack of bend. So this is very often the case. And here you can see one more time just the position. So here in this picture I've tried to mark it green. I should have maybe taken a different color. So we place our whip just before the shoulder blade on the neck, but not on the bone, but on the muscle. And here you can see another example of that. Here you can also see the wooden whip, which I usually use. And then what we call an outside rein. And that we point, so this is how I do it. I take my hand a little bit away from the horse and I'm pointing my whip usually a bit over in the direction of the wither. What you don't do is that you try to touch the horse on the outside. So actually reaching over and trying to touch on the outside. And or that you take the whip under the neck and touch there from the outside. So it's just a communication signal. You're not actually touching there on the outside. And you will see in the video in a moment how I do that. The outside rein leads the shoulder in. It takes weight off the outside front leg, so bringing more weight to the inside front leg. And of course, then by this also helps the bending of the neck. And you have, so just to explain to you a bit the difference between the hand and the rein aid. So the hand is the direct influence on the skull. It is responsible for correct stelling and bending and also for half holds later. So that's the direct contact to the horse's skull. The rein, that is rather the indirect contact to the horse's shoulders, right? So influencing the shoulders, that we can take the shoulder in and out, also the weight distribution between the front legs and the alignment of the shoulder towards the hip, right? So that we can place the shoulder a bit out or a bit in as in relation to the hindquarter of the horse. And we can also influence direction of front legs with those rein aids. And of course, when we are riding, we use it for direction. All right, so I will show you a video here. So this is the position of the inside rein. And here I'm working a bit in a standstill, just taking the shoulder of the horse a little bit out. This is the outside rein, pointing a bit over the neck. And you can see here that I mostly do that also through my body language. And here I'm playing a bit at the standstill with the shoulder of the horse, a bit out, a bit in, a bit out, a bit in. Then I do the same in movement as well. So here you see an inside rein, making the circle a bit bigger from an inside rein. So placing the shoulder a bit out, and you can see here how that almost also looks a bit like a quarter in. So again, here on the circle, bringing the shoulder a little bit out. And many horses lean very much on the inside front leg on the circle. So this can be very beneficial to increase bending, especially in the beginning of the horse's education. And here also placing the shoulder a bit out. Now we have an outside rein, and you can see how I mostly just open my hand and I make a little bit of place so that the horse comes in and fills that space with the shoulder. So it's like drawing the horse's shoulder towards me. One more time. Here on making the circle smaller and drawing the horse's shoulder in. One more time, an outside rein, bringing the horse's shoulder in. And you can see even how he starts to have a little bit of a lift in the shoulder through that. And then once more, a bit of an inside rein, bringing the shoulder again a little bit out. And you could see here a bit inside rein and then again a bit outside rein. All right, so these were some video examples. Coming back to the presentation. Then let's speak about the leg aids. And the first one is the inside, what we call inside leg. So the horse is bending around it. And so they are in the beginning, I start really quite simply. So I'm just pointing my stick to the just behind the girth area, so where if you imagine the horse having a saddle on and a girth fastened to it, so just where the girth is, I actually point with my stick, and I just want the horse to just take a bit of a bending with the neck in the beginning, right? So I try to keep it simple. Later on, this aid will get more and more meanings, and it will become one of my most important aids. So for example, I really want the inside hind leg to step forward and into the center of mass. I want the inside hip to come forward and down. I would like to have the correct chest rotation and the outside shoulder getting more up and free, and also the increased bending of the neck. And of course, stelling and stretching the upper line is also included in that. So like I said, in the beginning, it's rather correct stelling and bending. And then I will add more and more meaning. So there's still, Birgit still says that she, in the chat, that she doesn't see really a big difference between inside and outside rein. It is very difficult for me to see. Yes, it is. I do it mostly through my body language. So maybe I should have done a little bit more of theater play in order to do that. But if you watch the recording, you will see a clear difference in the horses. Yeah, so placing the shoulder more out or placing the shoulder more in. And I do it by either closing my hand a bit to the horse's neck, so bringing you can imagine that you close the door a little bit, and then opening on the inside like that. Where's my hand? There's my hand. Yeah, so opening a little bit like that, so kind of having a bit of a draw, so opening, and that usually leads as it animates the horse to come towards you with the shoulder. And also I use my shifts of my body weight, so going a bit away from the horse with my weight. Okay, but now talking about the inside leg, and then here we have some examples. So pointing my whip to this kind of girth area on the horse's belly, and we would like to have the forward of the outside shoulder, a bend, and also then a forward step of the inside hind leg. And I'll show you also a video example of that. Then we have the aid for outside leg, and because of, like I said, we keep the system the same as in the riding, we call that leg bending away from itself. So, and that is just because in riding, your outside lower leg basically asks the horse to bend away from it. It is placed a bit more behind the girth, and in the groundwork, I will point over the horse's back towards the place where the outside leg would be lying, or a little bit towards the horse's outside hip. And with this aid, I would like to have the outside hind leg stepping towards the center of mass. I will still want to keep my stelling and bending, or even have that increase a little bit more. And that's really important to mention, because it doesn't mean that the horse then loses the bend and just steps sideways with crossing legs, but we actually want to keep the stelling and the bending. So that aid for outside leg is in fact added, to the aid for inside leg. It's not something we do instead. And also that usually once we use the aid for outside leg, we use it for quarter in, and that usually also means a little bit lift in the chest. So here you can see how I do that, and you are right, these are really quite subtle differences. So I'm just pointing my whip towards the horses, so a bit in the direction of the horse's hind quarter, you could say. And here you can see another example of how I basically have it point over the horse's back towards the horse's outside hip. And I will mention one more leg aid before I show you the next video. We call that the direct leg, and that is really bringing the hind legs more forward into the center of mass. So that could be pointing as an inside or as an outside aid. Yeah. So that just means that whenever a hind leg is stepping short, we want to increase the forward step. It doesn't mean faster. So I usually don't try to use my whip aids in the sense of hop, hop, go faster. So I try to do that with my body language and energy. And you can really tell the difference between faster and a better forward grab by, do you get actually the horse lighter in the shoulder or more heavy? So if they just go faster and then they have more backwards push, then they get heavy on the shoulder. And when you have more of a forward grab, they actually get lighter in the shoulder. And the difference really, do you want to have a, let's say, a direct leg or a bending around? That is also the timing. So in which moment do you use the aid? For example, when a hind leg steps forward, you can influence the direction of that leg, and if you get more forward. And usually the direct leg I use for a short moment only to say, come. And in the more bending around itself leg, I use for a longer time, and I keep it there and I'm just waiting until the horse is bending around it. And just a graphic to show you what I mean by stepping forward and in the center of mass. So our goal in the academic art is to have a riding horse, of course. So if we imagine a common point of weight and of the rider and the horse, and we will draw a vertical line down to the ground, this is the place where we would like the hind legs of the horse to step forward to. So we want to increase the green arrows here, so the forward step, also of the front leg and the hind leg, and decrease more the backwards push, because we don't want the front legs to push under that point of weight or to push too far backwards out. All right, and now I'll show you one more video about those leg aids. So I'm pointing my stick towards the belly of the horse, and here you can see a bit the teaching process. So as soon as the horse will kind of look at it and bend, I will take it away. This is a bit of a different perspective filmed with a GoPro, so from the front, so pointing my stick a bit towards the horse's belly, and then using my cavesson in order to help with the bend. That's why I explain the hand first. And now we see the same in movement, so just pointing my whip towards that girth area of the horse, and of course placing my body in a certain way also plays a big role. So here again, just a bit that having a reaction, a bend to the inside from my aid. I was changing the whip now, and now we see this in movement, having an inside hind leg stepping forward and having a little bit of a bend. Now a bit from a different perspective, a bit more up. So here pointing my stick again towards the belly of the horse. This is almost already like a bit of a shoulder in, so it's a little bit exaggerated. So it's not just a pure bending. And here we see this one more time. Inside hind leg stepping forward and under center of mass. And you can see how that leads to an increased bending of the horse. And the exercise I'm doing here with the horse is increasing the circle. And here is just a normal circle. All right, okay, so that was inside leg. Now we come to outside leg. So pointing it just over the horse's back. And here you see, this is how I teach it. So I just want the horses to come towards me in the beginning, like that. So I'm like drawing the horse towards me. And he's a little bit overdoing it. And then I start shaping it more and more, that a horse also doesn't lose the bend. And then I will do that on the circle. So I will ask the hindquarter to come in, and then also use my other aids that I have until then in order to maintain the bend. So for example, inside rein or outside rein. Yeah, so keeping the bending so that the horse doesn't really get just side passing without a bend. So here you see this with minor, also the aid for outside leg on the circle, bringing the hindquarter of the horse more to the inside. And in the beginning, that doesn't have to be a perfect quarters in yet. It's just about that you can communicate with the hindquarter of the horse. So now you can see inside leg, stepping under of an inside hind leg. and then changing to outside leg. Probably in a moment. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so then changing to stepping under of an outside hind leg. So it's just about, can you place the hind quarter of the horse a bit out, or can you place it a little bit in? And then we use our other aids also in order to start shaping the correct side movements from that. All right, so that was about leg aids. And I will continue with the presentation. And just to clarify, so the leg aids are used to bring the hind legs forward and into the center of mass and to align the hip towards the shoulder. So Anke, this is also what we spoke about in our lesson this morning. And also we correct any kind of deviations of the hind legs away from the center of mass with those, yeah? And then we will call those aids a little bit differently, but this doesn't really matter for today. And we can also use the leg aids to shorten up the push. So when we teach those aids, we are very much in a kind of pedagogic situation, so teaching situation. And this is really another great occasion to get to know yourself and your horse better. Because, what does your horse do, for example, when it doesn't know the answer to your question? Does it start pushing into you or running you over? Does it just freeze and not do anything, like trying not to be there? Does it get nervous and wants to run away? Or, does it try everything it knows? Because one of those is for sure correct. So how does the horse understand? Or is it just patiently waiting and thinking, okay, my human will probably rescue me in a moment if I don't try? And then what kind of teacher are you? How do you react when the horse doesn't know the answer? Do you just add more pressure or maybe even cause pain so the horse reacts? Or do you find another way to explain? So how patient am I? That's always the good question. And can I ask for advice if it doesn't work out? When things don't work, can I ask my teacher, for example? Am I actually able to be a teacher for my horse in this moment? So can I explain something to my horse? What is my reaction when things don't work out? And do I understand myself what I am trying to explain there? And of course, well, in the end, if you are around horses long enough, you know that it's actually the horses who teach us and we are the ones who are learning the most, but still we are in a kind of teaching situation in that moment. We will use the standstill exercises a lot to teach those aids and as well as in movement. So I do both. And I also teach those aids, as you could see, a lot on the circle. And while teaching those aids, I really allow the horse plenty of time to process, so to integrate the new information. The brain builds new synaptic pathways while we learn. That's, of course, the same with our horses. And the processing time and breaks, they really play a major role there. So when we have longer breaks, the brain can actually integrate the new knowledge much better. And breaks also ensure that the horse always returns to a parasympathetic state and we don't accidentally build up more and more tension. And we call that trigger stacking. And that's really where the softness and the trust in the work comes from. So my advice is to slow down, do less, and allow plenty of time to process. This will be faster and more sustainable. I also make a difference between reaction and response. So a reaction that's only on the outside of the horse, such as moving away from an uncomfortable pressure, and a response that is with understanding and with softness. And we have the inside of the horse as well. Right, then we come to the primary aids, so our body language. And like I said, I'm just mentioning a few things here for you to look at. And I go more into detail I have really seminars where I include a lot of that as well. So in the groundwork, the way we walk, our posture, and also like how we position our shoulders and feet, that really has a big impact on the way the horse moves. So horses are all about body language. So they can read it very well, and they're really very good at that. And they can see the smallest shift of weight or a slight turn of a shoulder. And as one of you have mentioned, it is not so easy to see the difference there, but for the horse, the difference is very perceptible. And the problem is that we humans are not very aware of our bodies. And most of us, we just sit at the desk the whole day, and we are not very connected to our bodies as well. And we mostly notice when something hurts or doesn't work. And actually a big part of my job is helping people with their body language, become more aware of how they position themselves, because the horses will always listen to our body language first. And then sometimes we wonder why it doesn't work, or the horse even does the opposite as we ask. And that's usually because we do one thing with our whip and quite another thing with our body. Just to give an example, one of the most common things is leaning towards the horse when showing the aid for outside leg. So we want the hindquarter to come in, so we kind of lean over the horse in the direction of the horse. And then, of course, the horse moves away from that pressure instead of coming towards us. So we need to do the opposite, taking our shoulder a little bit away, our inside hip a little bit away, and more having the feeling of fishing, than of going and trying to push that hindquarter over, because we can do that anyway. It's just a communication signal. So the way how we position our shoulders, for example, has a big impact on the horse. So if we turn, for example, our inside shoulder a bit more to the horse or away from the horse, if we turn the inside shoulder a bit more to the horse, that usually increases the bending. And we can also think about taking our outside shoulder a bit more back in order to allow the horse's outside shoulder to come forward. You can also think about opening or closing the way. So whenever you think about you would like the horse to do something with the shoulder, try to think about how you can initiate that with your own shoulder first. Because the horses just really learn to mirror our shoulder position, and it's a really nice way of communicating. So here you have an example. In the left picture, I'm doing a quarter in, and I have my shoulders rather at a 90-degree angle to our circle line. And then on the right picture, I do more of a shoulder in, and I have my inside shoulder a bit more forward and towards the horse, and my outside shoulder a bit more back. Then the same, of course, goes for the hips and the feet. So aligning the feet with the line of travel, that's always a good idea. That we actually keep the line of travel, but at the same time that our toes point forward. And then that we can play with that. For example, when we want to have more bending, what I usually do is I turn my the tips, my toes, a little bit more out of the circle. And maybe when you see the videos about the circle and you pay attention to that, you will see that. Right. So, you can also try to think about your belly button, or your hips. So, for example, pointing your belly button straight forward into the horse, or pointing it a little more out of the circle, and that actually makes a difference in how the horse finds a bending. And this is just an example here. So using my body language in order to get into a shoulder in rather than just the secondary aids. Our body position as such also plays a big role. So meaning what I mean by that is that we can position our body in different places around the horse. So just like we saw those, maybe I'll just come back to that for the moment. This one. So in all these places, I can not only show an aid, but I can also position my body so that we have, we can be more at the shoulder as an inside rein, we can be at the belly as an inside leg, we can be behind the horse in the long reining. And this is a very nice way also how to work the horse a bit in collection. We can be as an outside leg in the crossover position, or as an outside rein in work in hand from the outside. And really, depending on where we place ourselves, we have an influence where am I here? We have an influence on the horse. So, for example, our position is more driving forward or it's more halting. So, with a young, very forward, impatient horse, I will position myself a bit more forward. And with an already schooled horse that I, for example, want to school more in the driving aids, I will position myself maybe a bit more backwards. And then our lower body, so that also points to feet, that is very influential as well. So how we shift weight from one leg to another. So a lot of teaching the aids is being done by me. No, I do. Let's start this sentence one more time. So I teach those aids a lot by shifting weight from my foot to foot. So, for example, going more on my inside foot with my weight or going a bit to my outside foot. And then I want the horse to kind of imitate that. Or I can walk a bit faster, I can walk a bit slower, I can walk with a little bit more spring in my step, and I can also indicate rhythm with my feet. This is a really great thing. So, for example, when you want to work on collection. Also, the posture is quite influential. Do you make yourself rather small, try not to be there, or do you kind of stand your ground and square your shoulders? And do you kind of invite the horse to come in? Or do you ask to keep a distance? And sometimes when horses, for example, they very much walk into you in the groundwork position, then the problem is often that we are asking the horse to do that. So we are kind of unconsciously inviting the horse to do that instead of saying, oh, please keep your distance, with the body language. Then we can have a lower and a higher energy. And we have to really learn how to regulate our energy around horses, because sometimes we might have a very sensitive horse, and bringing too much energy yourself will rather, have the horse kind of spill over in a metaphorical sense. And sometimes you have a rather slow horse, and you need to bring a bit the energy for both of you, right? And then our breathing is very influential as well. So using that, for example, that we are consciously breathing in and out, that we are aware of the breathing, that sometimes when we get focused, we stop breathing, for example. So that when something gets difficult for the horse, maybe we just keep breathing in a normal way, and that will already help the horse quite a lot. And that we also sometimes take a deep breath out in the breaks, and in our breaks, just maybe focus on our breathing a bit and just trying to, breathing is a very nice way of becoming conscious of your body, for example, and connecting to your body. And I also really like to use my focus in the horse's training. So kind of looking at a certain body part of the horse and sending a bit of energy through that gaze of mine. And you can also do the opposite and just looking away from the horse, for example, in moments when you would like the horse to relax more. So just, for example, a lot of people are staring at their horses the whole time, and it makes their horses also a bit uncomfortable. So trying to sometimes just look forward in the direction of where you're going, or just trying to perceive the horse out of the corner of your eye. So softening your gaze a little bit, and then using your gaze consciously and with pointed detail, and say, I want that hind leg to step a little bit under, and then becoming soft again with your gaze. So that's a very interesting thing to play with. And we also use our point of weight a lot, and that becomes more important later when you work more with collection, that you can lean more forward with your body, for example, and you can lean more backwards with your upper body. And that way you shift your own center of mass. And that's something I, for example, like to use very much when I am in the groundwork, in the launch work. When you're in the groundwork, it's a little bit the opposite, right? So it's like leaning a bit backwards, inviting the horse forward, and then maybe straightening yourself a little bit more up and inviting the horse for a more collected kind of posture.